Welcome back to the program. And governance and politics in River State gets our attention yet again. The jungle has matured. Strong words from Governor Sim Fubara yesterday when he announced the decision of his administration to probe governance in River State. And your guess is as good as mine. The question would naturally be, what does this mean for the political stability in River State? How would the other party respond? But again, more importantly, perhaps what we should be scrutinizing now is the judicial intervention, that arm of government that we look to interpret the actions of the parties in the Rivers political feud in the last couple of months. And joining us to help us understand this is Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Norison Quakers. Mr. Quakers, thank you so much for joining us on the Morning Brief.
Good morning. It's indeed my pleasure to be part of this discourse. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Let's start with the Port Harcourt, the court order issued by the Port Harcourt High Court restraining the 25th defendants, that will be the pro-Wike lawmakers, from parading themselves as lawmakers of the River State Assembly. Now, if you tie that to the Federal High Court order restraining Governor of River State, Simlai Fubara, from preventing the State House of Assembly members from carrying out their statutory functions, how do you interpret these contradicting court orders from different courts of law that studied the same books?
Thank you so much. You see, first of all, we must first understand the context. What is going on in River State is nothing but the theater of the absurd. It's a comedy of errors. Unfortunately, no one has actually stepped forward to cause the crisis to cease. Now, what do I mean by this? The Constitution is very, very clear. The provisions of the Constitution are sacrosanct. Section 1, sub 1 says the Constitution is supreme and has binding authority on all persons and authority. Now, if we go by that, and all these gladiators, all these political actors were made to swear to an oath of allegiance, and that oath of allegiance is to the state, is to the country, and not to any individual. And part of it is that the provisions of the Constitution will be upheld without more. Now, if we now look at it in that context, we now ask ourselves, right, what has transpired in River State? Is it within the ambit of the Constitution? So we start first by understanding what really went wrong. So you had 27 lawmakers who defected from the political platform or the political party that gave them tickets to run for elective office, and they won. Now, the Constitution now says in section 109, if you read the entire section, particularly sub 1 and G, that where this happens, you lose your seat. Now, 2 now says that the speaker will have recourse to sub 1 of section 109. In other words, he will receive and declare the seats as being vacant. Now, question is, at the time this transpired, was there a speaker of the River State House of Assembly? Now, because of the number that one could say were left behind after the 27 defected, an individual emerged to say he is now the speaker and now declared the seat vacant. And this was communicated to the Independent National Electoral Commission. Now, as at this time, it is taken that the constitutional provision has kicked in. But one thing that I have come to realize is that the way the provision is couched, incidentally, I have it before me, it says from 109 sub 1, a member of a House of Assembly shall vacate his seat in the House if G now say being a person whose election to the House of Assembly was sponsored by a political party, he becomes a member of another political party before the expiration of the period for which that house was elected, provided that his membership of the latter political party is not as a result of a division in the political party of which he was previously or a member of a merger or 2 or more of political parties or factions by one of which he was previously sponsored. Or so you find this constitutional provision spelled out clearly. Now, it's clear when you look at 1091, it says a member of a house shall vacate his seat. In other words, the decision to vacate is imposed on the individual. All right. Now, where this has happened, and the speaker has also taken the step, the question that would then now beg for answer is whether this constitutional provision has kicked in. The answer is yes. Now, back to your question, you have a federal high court order restraining these persons from parading themselves as members of the House. Rightly so. Rightly so. Now, you also have another provision, another decision of the court restraining the governor from tampering or otherwise doing anything that will prejudice or infract on their constitutional role as legislators. Now, question is, has the court been furnished with any evidence that the governor has interfered with the performance of their constitutional duty? For now, what is paramount is to interpret whether these 27 members have lost their seats in the Rivers State House of Assembly. Incidentally, like I keep saying, the challenge we have is not in the want of rules, laws, and regulations. This same issue had happened a while back in Abegunde and Ondo State House of Assembly, right, where the Supreme Court has made this pronouncement. Now, as opposed to parliamentary system where you can carpet cross, what we have here is when a political party sponsors you, so it's a constitutional provision. So is it provided for in the Constitution? I just read it to you now. And now this has been subjected to judicial interpretation, and the court has held all the way to the Supreme Court that when you do that, automatically you lose your seat. And it shouldn't be an issue for any political discourse because it's an issue of law, right? So the question is whether the facts have changed from Abegunde's decision. Now, there have been a number of other cases in relation to this because as a people, we find it very difficult to adhere strictly to rules and regulations. So as far as I'm concerned, until the governor is found to have done a constitutional infraction in relation into interfering with the function of their legislative duties, I recall, at least from the news, that he paid a visit to the House of Assembly of the state.
But it would seem that the governor has indeed breached the order of the Federal High Court in Abuja by relocating the functions of the State Assembly to the government house. Isn't that the case here?
Yes, I'm coming to that. That is a major constitutional infraction. And I think the governor should also be advised and be called to order, right? Now, because of the kind of people that we are, right, you have the constitution that delimits and empowers. You have 3 tiers of government, all right? One government is mutually, what you could say, exclusive in terms of separation of powers. No single government should, or an arm of government should dictate to the other arm how to function or how to work. And incidentally, as far as the law is concerned, you have Section 4 that confers constitutional powers to the legislature. You have 5 that confers executive powers to the executive. And then you have 6 that confers judicial powers to the judiciary. So you can see how exclusive these powers are. And then to a large extent, they are also interdependent. Now, the Constitution has a provision for where the legislative function or work should be performed. And this you will find, you see, like I keep saying, there's nothing new under the sun as far as Nigeria is concerned. You have Inokojo and Adeleke, where this issue was also laid to rest, even by the Supreme Court, that there's a place designated for the performance of legislative duties. And you cannot go outside of that. Now, if you look at section, I think it's 108, yes, section 108 of the Constitution, where it talks about where the governor can meet with the House of Assembly, it talks about a designated place. So the question is, where is the designated place? You have built a structure. It's not for you to now ask them to come and meet in the government house or the hall provided for your own use in the government house for the legislative function. It just shows that you're in control of the House of Assembly of the state, and that cannot happen. No matter what is going on, the court has stepped in. Let the court perform its duty. But again, you always have political consideration moral conspiration, religious conspiration, and a number of other things to now determine constitutional provision. And so long as we begin to deploy political solutions to legal problems, we'll continue to have this legal crisis and legal problems.
Let us
just digress a bit. Sometime back, our immediate past president committed several constitutional breaches. He was never called to order. The the National Assembly at that time looked the other way. And so it has been a trend. If the incumbent also begins to commit constitutional breaches, nothing will happen. The heavens will fall.
All right, let us
it's just so sad.
Apparently, there's a problem with the rule of law in our country, which we were trying to, excuse me, we're trying to address here. But I want to put things in perspective and get your legal position on this, so that we're clear on who really is a member of the House of Assembly as far as River State is concerned. So a gentleman had died, I think, from the Ogoni axis. So there were 32, now remaining 31. Ehie Edison is now the chief of staff. He resigned his position, so he's no longer a member of the House. So there are 30. Before all of at the beginning of this feud, Ehie and others were suspended. And then this gentleman later defected to the APC, which, according to as you've interpreted 1059 or 1G of the Constitution, they've lost their seat. So do we really have a legislature in River State? Based on my explanation.
Okay. Now, thank you so much for that question. Do we have a legislative house in River State? The answer is yes, we do. You know, incidentally, when you x-ray this provision, what it talks about is once you defect, so those who have defected automatically have lost their seats in relation to the Abegunde's case that I cited earlier. So the Supreme Court has already made a pronouncement on this. So they've lost their seat. Now the remainder will now constitute the House of Assembly of the state. What INEC
let us say, if I may button, I did say that this remainder were suspended by the people who later defected. That's where I started from.
No, so look at it this way. At the time they were suspended, were they still members of the House of Assembly of the state? At the time they were suspended, the people who suspended them, were they still members of the House of Assembly of the state? The answer is no. So you cannot have, and you see the beauty of all of this, if this constitutional crisis continues, right, and then it leads to some sort of conflagration in River State, the president has powers vested in him under Section 305 to declare a state of emergency. And that is what they need to avoid in River State, because the president has that power to do so. And the National Assembly will take over the legislative function of the House of Assembly of the state. It's all provided for in the Constitution. It happened some years back in Plateau State when Joshua Dari was governor of the state. And so we should be very careful. The Constitution is very clear and apt. And if there are crises and you have submitted it to the court, it's prejudicial and an affront for you to embark on self-help exercise, which is what is going on in River State. It's even wrong in the first place, right, that after this whole process has emerged, and one thing that intrigued me was Edison Ehie, if my memory is not failing me, who emerged through that process as the new speaker, made that declaration in conformity or in compliance with Section 109 G in relation to sub 2. All right, by declaring the seats of the people that defected as vacant. Now, along the line, Edison Ehie resigned his speakership and was then now appointed as, I think, whether chief of staff to the governor of the state. Now, question is, at the time he left, was there an election that was organized resulting in, I think it's Jumbo, so the new person who is there, to have emerged through that process? Suddenly, just last week, Jumbo emerges as the new speaker and says that it is Ehie handed over to him. When did this take place? And that's why I said it's a theater of the absurd and it's ridiculous.
Well, Senior Advocate, Let me just
Yes.
follow up with the point you made, because it's been an option on the table, but it appears as though everyone is trying to avoid it. And we've seen that there may be some even proposal for what may be that possibility, which is the takeover of sort. But I just want to know, is the situation, has it gotten to the extent to which all of them cannot come back and say, let's fix it, such that the basic or the most plausible option now to resolve this will be the declaration of a state of emergency? And what will that imply? Will that really solve the situation or be creating another problem entirely?
Well, declaration of a state of emergency, because it simply means that the federal might has been called to bear. It means the federal government has taken over the functions of the state. Mind you, even the governor too will go where a state of emergency is declared. He cannot continue to function as governor of the state. It means the federal level, at the federal level, an attorney will be appointed for River State. And then the National Assembly will take over the legislative function of River State. And I'm saying that where conflagration occur, where crisis occur, beyond monumental dimension or frightening dimension, the federal government cannot sit back, because the president also has a duty to ensure that there is peace, order, and good governance also in River State beyond the federal level. Now, that's one level. But the other thing is, can there be a solution to this crisis? And absolutely yes. What the defected legislators can do is to simply denounce their already pronouncement that they have defected to APC. So now simply say, oh, we're sorry, we're actually members of PDP, and then go back. All of this will be addressed. But the question is, because of the distrust that is existing, can the governor now trust that these people were defected? Because all of this is actually happening because the governor also protect his office from encroachment, from being impeached. That's why this is going on. And it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We have reduced politics to brigandage, and this trend has to be curtailed. We can't continue like this as a country and as a people. We can't continue.
I just want to quickly ask this. And again, yes. Them saying they're now back in the PDP, I mean, it's just quite funny, really, if that is something that should be accepted yet again, because it just looks like as though you're using the mandate of the people to play ping pong. One moment you're here and there. But again, that's the situation we have on our hands. But I'd like you to speak to something the governor said yesterday. You may have heard where he was swearing in the new Attorney General for the state, and was saying that, well, it looks like you are a good son because you look like you've done your hard work. It's not like you paid to become a senior advocate of Nigeria. And that really hit a nerve for me. You're a senior advocate of Nigeria. I don't know if you heard that statement. Is it a thing that people pay to become senior advocate of Nigeria? How do you respond to that? Because from what we've heard, it's meant to be on merit.
Again, like I said, what is going on in River State is nothing but something that any discerning mind should sorrow over. It's quite painful. Now, apart from that, did you also listen to the Attorney General when he was speaking? He said that he's married to one single wife. All right. And so you ask yourself, you have an Attorney General now in the state who is making that in his introductory speech, and he is introducing himself as a man that is married to one single wife. Is it really an issue, or is it about competence? Is it about delivery of the job? You are the Attorney General. You're the Chief Law Officer of the state. You're to ensure that there are no constitutional breaches. You see, if there is, for instance, a constitutional breach, the current Attorney General who has been sworn in, is he one that can walk away? In the history of this country, I just knew just a few individuals who have done that. And incidentally, most of them are actually from Ogun State. Mr. Wemimo Ogunde SAN and then one chap who I've forgotten his name. They walked away when they realized that they couldn't function well with their chief executive. They walked away. Now, how many attorney generals will see constitutional infraction, bare-faced constitutional infraction, and simply say, look, Mr. Governor, I cannot work with you because my responsibility, because he's an attorney general wears two caps. He's the commissioner for justice and attorney general of the state. So he functions both as advisor to the government and also to ensure that justice at the end of the day prevails in the state. Now, back to what you also said. Quite frankly, I find it absurd that the speaker will say, oh, is a senior advocate who earned his senior advocacy and that he didn't pay for it. I mean, I find that absurd. I don't know where he got his facts from. One thing is clear: before you can become a senior advocate, the process is tortuous and quite demanding. Quite demanding. I've been a senior advocate now going to about 14 years, and I can say to you, it's not easy. They interview all the senior advocates that you find around today, went through a process. You have the Legal Practitioner Privileges Committee that will x-ray, examine, and question. If you don't deserve it, you won't get it. You will not be conferred with the rank. And if you misbehave, you can also be debarred. You can also lose your certificate. We know some senior advocates that were dealt with by the Legal Practitioners Privileges Committee. It's a privilege, and it can be withdrawn. So I don't know where he got all this from, and it's just shameful. So you can see the sort of characters we have in politics. It's really, really shameful.
The question is,
they look at the governor himself saying that something about jungle. I mean, come on. Indeed, how can you, an executive of the state, use such words or phrases? Are you declaring war on your own state or perceived enemies? Do you want to throw the state into crisis because of politics? It's quite shameful. It's quite shameful. Unfortunately, that's the country that we are in. That's the country we're in.
Well, we hope that it doesn't degenerate further. But more importantly now, if you look at the contradicting court judgments, many would say it's not, what's happening is not far-fetched. The one from the Port Harcourt Division, which is in Rivers State, and the one from the Federal High Court in the FCT, many would say that it leaves very little for us to wonder where the orders are coming from. So can you rule out the manipulation of the judiciary by politicians in all of this?
You see, like I said earlier, there's nothing that is happening in this country that has not been pronounced upon by the judiciary itself, that have not been tested in court. I recall, I think it was Justice Nikitobi, JSC of blessed memory, in Buhari, and I think what Obasanjo also, if my memory is not failing me, where he said, in as much as judges can, they must keep politicians away from the hallowed chambers of justice. Allowing them to come in is to pollute the stream of justice. Now, a situation where I recall my good friend and brother, Professor Anselm Odnikalo, one of the fiery advocates that we have, said that the appointment process must also be visited. Politicians interfere in the appointment of judicial officers. And if you have been involved in the appointment of a judicial officer, when you have a legal matter, what do you expect? I mean, they're also human beings. And so we need to revisit the selection process of judicial officers. It is bad. And I remember Nikitobi said, once you allow them to come in, the stream of justice will be polluted. And that's sometimes what you see here. You find conflicting judgments of course. It's absurd. And it cannot continue. NJC has also stepped in, and that I know, because there's a directive of the National Judicial Council. Once a complaint is lodged and it is investigated, any judge that is found culpable will be shown the way out. And in fairness, the NJC has done something in that regard. But I think we need to do a lot more about the selection process. The Nigerian public, for instance, must have one or two things to say. Right? For instance, before anyone can qualify and be elevated or appointed as a senior advocate of Nigeria, the Nigerian public is first informed. A list is published for your comments. So if you find anyone who is not deserving or has conducted himself in a way that you can consider to be unethical, you will write to the Legal Practitioner Privileges Committee that this person is not worth it, is not suitable. And some people have been disqualified on account of this. So perhaps we also need to do that on the appointment of judicial officers. Once you see the list, send it to the public. Let their names be published, that these following persons have been listed for appointment to the bench. If you have any comments concerning their suitability, by all means, write to the National Judicial Council. Why these persons are not deserving. The Nigerian Bar Association is also involved. But unfortunately, there are a lot of things going on in our system that we cannot continue to have it this way. If not, the time will come. We will have no Nigeria.
All right, let us see if I may comment as we begin to wind down. Just a quick question you can answer just in about a minute. There's a lot of legalese, and I'm happy you've mentioned the fact that even the judiciary has some questions to answer when it comes to all of this interim, injunction, ex parte, all of the names that are being called. But what is the constitutional solution to the issue in Rivers State? It's not new. Remember before the Amechi tenure, it happened as well when Telemaba Makri was to be impeached by 5 individuals, and the House of Reps had to almost invoke Section 11 of the Constitution to take over their legislative function. We're getting there if we're not careful. What is the way forward?
The way forward is to simply adhere strictly to the provisions of the Constitution. But unfortunately, the Constitution can only be given life. It's a living organism by our belief and faith in that piece of paper. No matter how inelegantly drafted the Constitution will appear, the fact is it can only work if we believe that it must work. Unfortunately, we have a general attitude of circumventing the provisions of the Constitution. For instance, the political solution that the president entered into with the governor and the other political gladiators. As far as I'm concerned, it is indeed unconstitutional, but he stepped in. It is for anyone to, because that document is not enforceable in law. That document is not. So you cannot have a political solution to a legal problem. The only way it can work is let the judiciary also perform its function. So if you find a judge who has been compromised by virtue of either his ruling or his conduct, there's also the National Judicial Council that this matter can be reported to. There are also review mechanisms. One of our former judges of the Lagos State High Court, Justice Kessington of blessed memory, he said something that struck me once. He said the Constitution has no provision for reporting judges to any. If you find a judgment of a court that you're not comfortable with, there's a procedure that the Constitution recognizes, and that is for you to lodge your appeal. Your appeal can go as far as the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, even that process now is also being questioned because of political interference. If you stay away and you don't get involved, then the Constitution will continue to move and guide us. What is the essence of law? It's an instrument of social engineering for us to have a perfect, not at least near a perfect society. But unfortunately, the law itself has been circumvented. So it becomes very, very increasingly difficult to now have a smooth sail in these murky waters of politics in Nigeria.
Yeah, quite a number of propositions that you have put forward that we can reflect on, hopefully, and the coming days will be quite telling as far as Rivers State politics is concerned. We want to thank you very much, Mr. Norrison Quaker, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, for your time and contribution on the program. Thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.